You are live.
I'd like to extend greetings to all of those who have joined the meeting this evening of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission. We're going to call the meeting to order at this time. We do have a quorum of commissioners present, as well as a number of other individuals who will be contributing to the meeting in some fashion. I would like to first of all take action on our minutes from our previous meeting last month. And those were sent to you with the agenda by email. However, you also received a subsequent revised set of minutes. And it's those that I would like to act on tonight. So, are there any additions or corrections to the corrected minutes for the March meeting of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission?
Mike, I don't know if I looked at which one I looked at, but my name is Mundy. So just do a search and replace. I think one of them had my name as both DAY and DY. So that's all.
So it's Mundy. Okay,
Yes.
well, I'll make a point to make sure if the minutes do not pertain to that, I'll simply make that correction.
Well, Mike, I read the first set. I think I'm not sure I understand what the corrections were.
Okay, there's only one correction that was made, and that was with respect to a statement that was made by Commissioner Leach. And she submitted a corrected version, and that corrected version was very accurate in terms of what she said. So that's the only change that you will see on that final set of minutes that I sent out, which was the last email that you received, contained that. And I also checked to make sure that Commissioner Monday's name was correctly spelled. Okay, hearing no other additions or corrections to the minutes shall stand approved by common consent. I'm very pleased to announce that we have with us this evening Rhonda McCoy, who is Professional Standards Manager for the Annapolis Police Department. And she is going to be addressing the accountability related questions that were raised by members of the Human Relations Commission in some of our previous meetings. And I did share that information with her. And in keeping with the commission's procedures, I would like to move immediately to her presentation and to deal with some of the other items earlier on the agenda once we have completed that part of the process. So with the indulgence and support of the commission, I would like to move ahead in that manner. Hearing no objections, we shall do so. Rhonda McCoy, welcome to the meeting of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us this evening. And I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. And as you noted, I'm Rhonda McCoy. I'm the Professional Standards Manager for the Annapolis Police Department, and I'll be talking to you and answering some of the questions that you all sent to me related to accountability in the police department and some training in use of force questions. And I'll begin by sharing my screen with you. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to talk about Annapolis Police Department policies and procedures to begin. Okay. How you view the current policies. One of the things that I looked at, you guys had sent me a note, and I did notice that you had an older version of the use of force policy. So we took corrective steps to have the correct policies, online with the city, through the city website and through the department website. That policy now is, I sent Mr. Keller and Mr. Hurley that link, and here it is now. If you would go to the city website, if you went to the department website, you would also see that link. Can everyone see that?
And it works. I've been there.
Okay, and what it is, it'll simultaneously update changes to the general orders when they are changed by the department. So when we make a change, you all will see the change as well when we make the change immediately. And it also provides a better view of the policies. Previously, what the city had was the policies were listed. They were put in a PDF. It was attached to kind of like the bottom portion of another page, of a larger page. And so now you'll press that link and it'll swing you right over to the general orders. I wanted to talk about some of the policy revisions. We're in a massive change of our policies at the department. And so here are it's ongoing. It's a list of all the policies that we've changed in the last 2 years. B11 written directives, C3 use of force, C16 conducted energy weapon, that's the taser policy, C4 bias-based profiling, D3 body worn camera program, D4 citizens recording law enforcement, that was new, and written. E4 traffic stops, G5 the disciplinary matrix, which was adopted from the state, G7 administrative hearing, that's new, K1 evidence and recovered property, K4 stop and frisk, L14 officer involved death investigations, that was new, L15 exculpatory evidence, that is new, M1 rules and regulations, and M5 duty to intervene, and M4 police chaplains program. As I said,
Excuse me for interrupting. Where is the bias policing? What is the number for that, please?
Bias policing is C4. It's bias-based profiling.
Yeah, that's not on the link that you sent me, I guess, but I'll have to look it up. It goes from C3 to C8, I guess. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll check with the gentleman and make sure that is on there. Some of the policies that we recently updated, this is like new, so he just swung out to that. So all these policies, if you don't see them on there, they will be on there by tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
But we felt it important to, that you guys have the most updated versions of our policy. We never want you all reading the old policy. Okay, current policies that are in final draft that we are revising: A6 command protocol, A5 staff inspections, B7 media relations, C5 persons in police custody, C6 fingerprinting and photographing of persons in custody, C19 juvenile arrest, G1 investigation of complaints, N5 field training and evaluation program, and N6 health and wellness. This is not exclusive of all the policies. We plan on turning all those policies over. When you go and you look at them, you'll see some of them are older. When you go to the link, what we're going to do is, when we're revising something, like right next to it, we'll put that being revised, so you'll know which ones that we're currently working on. Okay. There was a question about our use of force policy, and whether or not our officers follow the policy. And I'm happy to report that overall, yes, they do follow the policy. I included some data in here to show you our use of force complaints. As you can see, in 2012, we had 36 complaints, and all of last year we had 1. for excessive force. And so we feel like the officers are, getting it, and that, they're doing a good job out there. But, if they're not complying with the policy, of course, we do answer to it in doing very, very thorough and comprehensive investigations. There was another question related to our training, de-escalation versus use of force. And what I wanted to tell you all is de-escalation, we have a separate block for de-escalation, but the use of force training, their use of force cannot be taught without de-escalation. So it's all taught together. They're taught simultaneously. They're interchangeable and interwoven with one another. We do a lot of scenario-based training, and which considers the adult learning theory. And in addition, officers are given separate classes on biased behavior, gender and cultural diversity, and institutional response. And instinctual response to trauma, which, we instituted that this year to address, PTSD in officers and look out for their wellness. But there seems to be this belief that there's just use of force and we're just teaching force. But when they go in and they're doing the use of force practicum, it is taught with de-escalation. When they're in those scenarios, it always considers de-escalation. If you look at that picture down the bottom that I included here, if you see that little box there, has like a little helmet there. This is what the department, we applied for and got a grant. So this is kind of our virtual reality simulator that the officers put the simulator on their heads. It's very, very interactive. So it was purchased by Axon, so we can do things like put scenarios in there, like responding to like a mental health crisis and other things that is virtual reality, and they get to practice that. So you all know that this is, all the de-escalation is woven into use of force. Even when they're firing their firearms, de-escalation is woven into that. By state mandate, they have to fire at least 50 rounds of judgmental shooting. When they do the 50 rounds of judgment shooting, they have to attempt to de-escalate. If they don't, they fail that portion of the course. There was another question on whether or not we should codify use of force into city code, which I don't believe that we should. The state has already done that. Public Safety Article 3-524 codifies a whole lot of things with use of force into Maryland State Code. And if you can see, there's a lot of things. A police officer may not use force against a person unless under the totality of the circumstances, the force is necessary and proportional. If you look at our new use of force policy, which we wrote last year, you'll see that all of these provisions, every provision that is here is in that policy because it mirrors the state policy. And what we don't want to do is, the state also in the Accountability Act set forth provisions for the Governor's Office of Youth Services and Crime Control Prevention to do a whole lot of studies. They're getting a whole lot of reporting, and they're going to put a report out. So from that report, you don't usually do studies unless you want to do, want to see if there's, possibly some changes to be made. If you, do lockstep, do what the state has already done, which is redundant. But if you did do that and they change, then, that's really, really hard to go back to the city and then, do a recodification, what is already here. These have
precautions to care for you and your family in the safest way possible. If you have a fever, cough.
These are like really, really, really officers are, held to a standard underneath the state, because this is codified in Maryland law. So they can lose their certification. They can also, in cases of excessive force, be charged, criminally charged now under that same Accountability Act. So I don't think that there's any need for us to do anything more in the city to try to codify our own general orders, because our general order mirrors the state.
Could I raise a question here? Thank you for your statement there. I'm the one that raised that, and it wasn't to codify the use of force. It's that the city council should consider voting on it and approving it, not as a code, but setting the standard for proper use of force. We can answer questions at the end, but it was not to put it in the city code.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I misunderstood, Mr. Hurley. Okay, so this is a very, very short PowerPoint, because you all had, not that many questions, and I'm, sure that you have a whole bunch of questions for me that I'm happy to answer. That is probably not in this PowerPoint. So please ask away.
Yes,
So,
Chuck,
yes.
you have a question?
Well, several.
I'll call
points,
on Commissioner Hatch after you ask your question.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry,
Go ahead,
Mike, did you? I thought you were, I was going to defer to Commissioner Hatch. Several points. One, obviously it's a complicated issue, and the rest. As I, in the link that I got from you, Ms. McCoy, there were more than 50 policies, and I guess with the ones that weren't there, it's probably upwards of 50. I don't know the exact number, but for the number of standing orders is a very large number, and I doubt very much that, with maybe one exception, that most members of the city council have never read them. And given the importance of the relationship between law enforcement and the community, the burden shouldn't be all on law enforcement. I think some of the elected leaders should have some responsibility to not only understand, but to actually read and approve those policies. That was one of my points. I got to tell you, the one exception whenever I did have concerns about use of force, and I'm glad to see that there is a separate policy on biased base enforcement, which I think is at the core of my concerns, perhaps others. And whenever I have a law enforcement question, I generally reach out to Alderwoman Rhonda Pindell Charles, who I have been friends with for many years, and consider her a real mentor of mine on law enforcement. I think I'm pleased to say that I think with Chief Jackson and the rest, and his leadership team, that they are doing a good job. My concern, though, still is that given the climate of tension around, not just not in Annapolis, but elsewhere around the country, this is an issue that deserves priority attention from the elected officials to review, and if they find the policy completely correct, to approve it, but that it deserves a healthy debate given the climate of racial tension on law enforcement today.
So, Mr. Hurley, I'll answer that by saying, number one, Maryland State has gone above and beyond other states, and
finally, repealing Libor was a major step in the right direction
for police accountability. One of the things that that we had to do was send that policy to the Training Commission. So they had to have a copy. It had to have, we had to have certain things in the policy. It had to comport with state law. So the policy does, satisfy, state law. other things that, that Chief Jackson has done, as far as the Accountability Act, we have gone over and above what was required for that act. To put things in our department to be 21st century forward, in our thought about, law enforcement procedure. And I think that, we've done a good job. There's still a lot of work to do. But I think that, we have done a reasonably, good job each time that, we've changed any type of policy, to let you know that the state is watching us. All of our grants and everything is contingent upon those provisions being in that policy. If they're not in there, if it doesn't comport with the state, that makes us ineligible for a lot of funding. And trust me, we're definitely not trying to do that.
Well, I understand, but my one last comment is it's not really entirely dependent on written policy. I mean, the determinant of proper conduct by law enforcement is the culture of the department, and the leadership of the chief obviously is extremely key to that. So it's not just what's on paper, it's what happens when there is a violation. And the use of force said the procedure, but it didn't really lay out the penalties. But at the end of the day, I think this is great. I had read the previous use of policy, and I'm glad to read the new one. But I still would like to hear from Chief Jackson himself on how he intends to, I'm not sure the right words, what actions he takes to make sure that some of the ugly issues, George Floyd being one of the worst examples, how he takes action to make sure that never happens in Annapolis. And when it's appropriate, I would like to hear from him.
Okay, but I can answer that question for you, and I'm going to tell you that
I understand you can, but I still would like to hear from the chief.
Oh no. Okay, yes, I will let him know that you want to hear from him. But I did want to tell you about, what we do here in Annapolis. And what I try to tell people is, we have a 3-prong approach, when it comes to our personnel. Number 1, we train. Number 2, we monitor. Number 3, we adjust. So whether that may be an adjustment for an individual officer, or it may be an adjustment in policy, or it may be an adjustment in a procedure. And, what I mean by that is that, we have a good monitoring program here. People, usually concern themselves about, the training. But I do want people to know is that we do have a good monitoring program, here, where we're looking at, our officers' actions, and, we're, making corrections, if there are any violations of policy, or even if our policy is in flaw. And what we're about to do, and what we're embarking on now, I'm excited to report is that, we got that larger grant for that $265,000 or $262. We are applying for another $300,000 next year because we're standing up our body-worn camera unit. And what our body-worn camera unit is going to be doing is they're going to start taking on some of the assessments that the sergeants were doing, when we were monitoring our officers. So they're going to specifically look at things like, when we have a car stop, when officers make an arrest, we look at every use of force. So, but, we're going to be, looking at them again, and creating a more vigorous monitoring system. Do I think that, and anything is wrong in here? No, but guess what? You can't expect what you don't inspect. And that is our, that's the way we do business. And so, we will be inspecting. One of the things as we're standing up this unit, let me share with you a different page.
While you're doing that, again, one thing I would add, but I'm sure you would agree with, another part of that policy should be recruitment, to make sure, there's some people that just don't deserve a badge and a gun, and make sure that they're not hired.
I'm going to tell you, Mr. Hurley, the state really did its job. It took care of that. So, you know, before anybody can be hired, before they can be certified with the commission makes us go and check every last job that they
Ma'am, I understand that Commissioner Jay Williams and I were on the recruitment task force. That's an important part of the, I'm sure you agree, it's an important part of making sure it doesn't happen.
It is. We couldn't get anybody bad in there if we wanted to. They would never be certified. You know, so that kind of cut you know, people from, you know, job hopping, you know, bad officers coming, you know, over to another department.
Right.
No,
Which has happened, right?
Yeah. If you left a department under, if let's say you had an IA complaint, and before the IA complaint was adjudicated, you left, you will not be certified. They won't certify you. If you had certain complaints, and you know, we get to see them all, and each officer, each department is commanded to go to every place that you worked. And now, under the penalty of perjury, and this is one of the things that we want you to know that we changed. So the questionnaire that we sent out to, that we send to hires, we put that provision in there from the state law that said, under the penalty of perjury, you will list every place that you worked. If you fail to list it, you could be charged with, you know, you could be charged with a perjury. So we get a comprehensive list of where they work, and then we're commanded by the state to go and check out all those places where they work. And trust me, it's hard, or I am very, very pleased to know that bad people won't be hopping. They just simply will not be certified. You know, I know of an instance where somebody tried to hire somebody recently, and they had something in their record, and they had to let that person go. They hired them, but they could not get them certified through the commission, and they had to let them go.
Commissioner Hatch, I know that you had a question or comment. Would you like to take it at this point? Commissioner Hatch? Okay, Ms. McCoy, you can proceed.
Okay. I am just awaiting questions, you know, from, I know that Commissioner Hatch had a question. Does anyone else have a question?
Or comment?
I had a quick question, Ms. McCoy. There was one slide that you had presented that said that you only had one use of force, I guess, violation or complaint last year.
Yes.
Was that just one complaint by a citizen, or how do you monitor or measure the either use of force complaints or violations of the use of force policy?
And so, you know, that's again, you know, if it was in-house, like we caught it on an assessment or while we're looking at the force, it would be categorized in that list, you know, of something that, you know, we caught it would be 2 instead of 1 if we had caught 1. But that was the complaint, which that case has been adjudicated. It, you know, went through the individual has, you know, received discipline.
Okay. And then, so when I look at that slide, if you don't mind going back to it, I thought that I read that it was 7 complaints. It was just 1 difference than last year. Is that what the measure that you were using, or is it that you only had one complaint?
It was 1 complaint, and we had 7 uses of force and 1 complaint.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Hatch, you've got the floor. You're currently muted.
For some reason, my camera doesn't want to work. My internet is acting up. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but anyway, Ms. McCoy, thank you for joining us tonight. You and I, we've had several conversations. When the commission started to embark upon trying to get down and narrow down some of the stats for Annapolis Police Department. I had just joined the commission at that time, and I provided them with the report that Randy Williams put together. And you and I have dialogued on that. One of the main things in that report that I raised as a concern was the way in which traffic stops were articulated as being done in that report. Some of the behavior and mannerisms of officers at that time. Can you weigh in on the report itself and some of the findings that you've discovered after reviewing the report itself?
Okay. So I'll say, this much, after, reviewing the report and, reading Mr. Williams' comments, I've done this type of work, throughout my career. And what I told you all is that, it was a very long report, and he put a lot of information in it, but it was very assumptive and with no backing on how he came to his assumptions. He did not say how, what his methodology was for coming to the conclusion, for his answers. And I was very, very concerned that the report was not done scientifically or comprehensively. And let me give you an example. He uses the population of Annapolis, population of Blacks versus whites, and how many people were stopped. And he made assumptions or conclusions, based on that population. And what I didn't see in his report is what his samples look like, and so it's very important that when you're doing that type of work, doing that type of in-depth study, that you have to stratify. And what I mean by stratifying a sample is that you would get the overall population of how many people were stopped, which I think that he had. What I didn't see was whether or not he stratified the samples, meaning that every day Annapolis grows in number. A lot of people work there. I don't live in Annapolis, but I work in Annapolis, and I am Black, and I could be stopped by the police. You could be stopped, or, other people, could be stopped, white and Black. And he could only make those assumptions if he stratified the samples to only look at white residents that were stopped by the police versus Black residents that were stopped by the police. Again, I know he put a lot of work, into it. And again, I've done these types of studies. They take a very long time. When they're done correctly. I just, I can't, I didn't want to, to comment, on it because, his methodology is not there. So I can't trust his findings.
Well, let me just ask you a simpler question, because I know that you can get real scientific when it comes to this, because you've been doing this work for such a long time. One of the points that were raised in the report was that officers, and I'm not going to name the officers, or an officer was identified as pulling someone over for a traffic citation and used this particular traffic citation, or something that could only be issued a traffic citation for, as a means to search a vehicle, right? Which is a concern. You pull me over for a broken tail light, and now you pulling me, ripping me out the car. What is the Annapolis Police Department doing to ensure that everyone is treated fair and according to the constitutional barriers that have been set up when interacting with the public.
You have an incoming call.
So I'm going to say this much, Mr. Hatch. And again, because he didn't write his methodology down there, he just, looked and said, hey, there's a car stop, someone stopped somebody and got them out of the car. But again, I don't know the totality of the circumstances. I don't know whether he got to the car, saw something, inside the car that was troubling. And, in those circumstances, the totality of those circumstances, you will want the officer to remove someone, from the car. I simply can't elaborate on it because I don't know, because he didn't elaborate in his report what happened. Sometimes officers do stop people. They may, the officer may see something troubling, may see a gun in the car, may get, a report or, something come up in the system to say, the tags are bad and, that this person, can't drive the car. It's an insurance violation. There is a myriad of different things why somebody could be removed from the car. Randy Williams just didn't elaborate on what that was.
Ms. McCoy, just indulge me for one second here. I'm going to read about 3 sentences from this report. Again, I'm not going to make mention of the accused officer's name here, and tell me whether or not in your line of work, whether or not this will be a concern for you. Officer blank stopped an African-American male for a Maryland safety equipment repair order violation. The citizen and his property were searched based on probable cause. Officer blank did not cite the probable cause used to search the citizen and his property on the Excel spreadsheet. Contraband only was discovered during the search, and the citizen was not arrested. The citizen was issued a Maryland safety equipment repair order violation citation for a non-functioning taillight.
Again, this is Mr. Williams citing something that, number one, I can't see because I don't have, he didn't put enough information in that. But, I was a law enforcement officer for 28 years. And, even though we don't practice that now, back when that report was written, we was illegal, and officers were allowed to arrest people for it. I can't say what happened. I can't say that, he stopped the car, may have smelled marijuana. It could have been any myriad of different things as to why, he searched this person. I can't say based on what we have because the report is not comprehensive.
So even if an officer were to find contraband on someone and not make an arrest, that doesn't raise a red flag for you?
If the officer found contraband on somebody and did not make an arrest?
Yeah, it says in his report that the citizen was only issued a Maryland safety equipment repair order violation citation for a non-functioning taillight, but contraband was taken from his person. And he doesn't list what specifically the contraband is, granted, but he does say that the officer searched his vehicle in person and removed contraband from him.
Again, he just said that arrest wasn't made. If it was marijuana and he gave him a criminal citation, not saying that, and this is, again, I want to preference that, this data that Mr. Williams cited in this report are 3 administrations back. It, happened under the Pristoop administration. We're now in the Jackson administration, so I don't know, what was happening then. I can only tell you what's happening now, under the Jackson administration. However, again, I know that you all want to a certain answer to say that, I would be troubled, by it, without, seeing that particular, report, or, some, not everything is arrestable. Officers have discretion. They do not have to arrest people. They can give people criminal citations. They can give people warning. They can seize the, they can seize the property. In my career, when I wasn't sure what it was, have took, seized what I suspected was contraband, and I sent it to the lab and waited for it to come back to say, this is, it came back heroin, it came back this, and then went and got an arrest warrant. I just can't say what happened in that case, but is that plausible that could have happened? Yes.
Okay, one more question for you, and then I'll give the mic up because I have a whole bunch of questions that I could ask. Officer, and I'm just going to throw a scenario at you, Ms. McCoy. Officer pulls me over. At what point legally is an officer allowed to search my vehicle and or person without my consent?
If they have probable cause to believe a crime is, being committed, i.e., or again, there is the side, sometimes people don't pay their insurance. I'll use that one, and in the system will tell the officer to take the tags, right? And, the car has to be towed, so, yes, we want the officer to inventory the property of the, of the car. So, we allow people to get stuff out, but whatever's left in there, they inventory it. Just make sure that, everything is, is there. So the tow truck people don't steal don't steal anything. And, or, there's an action, again, somebody, the officer pulls you over and he smells marijuana. Well, driving under influence is against the law. Even though, we have laws about how much, marijuana you have for possession, everybody forgets that one. You can't drive under the influence, that would, yes, the officer would take someone out, search them, make an arrest. There's, again, a myriad of reasons as to why this could happen.
So, and I promise then after this that I yield, Mr. Chair, would you say, because I hear what you're saying, that you don't know the methodology that was done in order for him to get, him being Randy Williams, to get to his findings. Had you known the methodology that was utilized, would you say that some of the issues that are articulated in this report under the Jackson administration, would they be of concern for you and the department?
Well, again, because they didn't happen under the Jackson administration. And, that's a hard question, Mr. Hatch, because, you're asking me, to speculate, and I'm just not a speculator. Anybody who knows me, it knows that, I'm a woman of fact. If that had been done correctly, I don't know. I can't answer your questions because I don't know whether it would have skewed the finding. So there's no way to answer that question because he didn't do, he didn't conduct his study in the proper manner. When I do studies, there is no question about how I came to my conclusion, what my sampling was, what I compared it, to, whether or not I regressed those results, and that it's usually two-tailed, meaning that, I just, I didn't come to the conclusion, by myself. We usually, someone else, looked at it and those conclusions were compared. I don't see any of that in his study, and I can't answer the question for you because I do not know if he had done it correctly. It probably will definitely skew the data. Especially on that one, with the population that first and foremost, he would have to know what the population was, in a particular period of time. Meaning, and he didn't spell that out. I looked at the data from this period to this period. I chose this period, because they're, and I know how how many people, were in Annapolis, and I know their demographics. There was this versus that. Then, we stratified, pulled out all the residents, all, white residents that were stopped, all Black residents that were stopped. And even looking, at, his time data, he didn't ask questions, he makes statements. But when we usually do these studies, we usually ask a whole lot of questions. I had prepared, something for you, guys to, kind of, and this is not just, this is this is an assessment. This is not even a study or an audit, that I did for Baltimore City when I created the use of force assessment unit. And as you can see here, and as you're looking, this breaks down the complete policy. Each line of the policy. Did the member immediately notify a permanent rank supervisor of the use of force? And, then gives it a score and notes, and goes all the way down to completely break that policy down as, I'm going through and looking and making assessments. Moves on, to the supervisor, breaks down all the supervisor's responsibilities were in a use of force and what they were supposed to do and what they didn't do. And as you can see up at the top, it has, and I built this for Baltimore City, but it's now a system because we couldn't keep operating off of the Excel sheets. But when I did have the Excel sheets, you can see that I do things extremely comprehensively. It has the name of the person review, and if you can see here, reviewer name.
You're not sharing that sheet. Whatever
not
sheet.
Sharing that sheet. Okay, let me go back and see if I can share that one. Let me go back in tiles. Stop sharing. And then share screen. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
All right. So this is an assessment that I built for Baltimore City. I did or created and set up their whole use of force assessment unit, where we, look at every use of force. And these are the type of things or the type of study that, and this is just an assessment. It's not the, the type of study that Mr. Williams was trying to do, which is, even a little bit even complicated with this. But what I'm, trying to say is that if you look here, you see that, there's a reviewer, the name and, and what happened. But when we go down and try to do a review, it asks certain questions, which was not in his report. We didn't even know what he wanted to know. But like here, this, I completely broke down the 1115, which is Baltimore City's use of force policy. And so up the top, you'll see everything that the officer was supposed to do broken down in those questions and then answered. If they did everything that they were supposed to do, they got a 2, which was 100%. If they didn't, they got a 1, and then there would be notes. Same thing with the supervisor, breaking the individual questions down and then answering, each question and, step by step by step. This is the way that, that we come to rational conclusions, and then going back and looking, comparing, seeing, what the score was. And then when we built this sheet, more than one person had to look at it. And then the supervisor, would make comparisons. And what we had is Mr. Williams did a study. No one reviewed it for correctness. No one, reviewed it for sufficiency. He just submitted it. And again, I applaud, I know what he was trying to do, because I've done very, very, big comprehensive studies like that, and they're hard. But, if you're making those assumptions, you have to have it, you have to back it up. The studies that I have done, with Baltimore City, they stand. 50 years from now, someone can pull a study that I did and they know exactly what I did and how I came to my conclusion.
I know exactly what Mr. Williams, or I believe I know what Mr. Williams was attempting to do, Ms. McCoy. And one of the things that this commission has a problem with, just like the residents of the city of Annapolis or across the nation, is making sure that there are mechanisms in place to identify and to remove officers who have rogue behaviors. And what we want to ensure is that things are in place in the Annapolis Police Department for you to identify officers that are behaving outside the guideline of policy and who are overstepping the bounds of the law. I mean, it saddens us to see the incident that took place in Memphis. But I believe, and I don't know if the commission joins me in this, but I believe that those officers didn't just start acting like that, that there were things that they were doing during the course of their career that could have been identified and could have been utilized to discipline and remove them from the police force. And we're hoping that the Annapolis Police Department have things in place to identify officers like that.
And so, as I said in the beginning to Mr. Hurley, again, Chief Jackson's major, he is an inspector general, and was a former one. You cannot expect what you don't inspect, which is why we are standing up a body-worn camera unit that will, look at, will conduct audits, will, look at, certain, will look at, certain incidents, and then, pull randoms. For our grant, what I wrote to the grant is that, we would do, one major audit for use of force. We would do one major audit for stops. We would do one major audit for arrest. And then we would do 16 minor audits, which would mean, which means that, we would pull random, samples of individuals, body worn camera, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. I want you all to know we are standing up the unit, but this goes on right now. Supervisors do audits of their officers. They look, and they monitor, which is why you can see that in our reporting or past reporting that our complaints are lopsided. We usually have, more internal complaints than we do from external complaints. That ensures we are monitoring our people. We are making adjustments. We believe in progressive discipline. If you don't learn the lesson this time, we increase the discipline. But that doesn't mean that you can't, that there's something that was egregious and we had to let you go. Has that happened here? Yes, it has. And we have we answered? Yes, we have. Those people are no longer employed here. But we want you all to know that, we are doing exactly what we need to do. In the beginning, I told you, we train, we monitor, we adjust.
Mr. McCoy, one more question, and I promise I'm going to yield, Mr. Chairman. I've said that twice. Okay, what happens to the officer who you remove or you terminate for egregious act? How do we ensure that that person does not get employed at another police department?
As I told Mr. Hurley, under the Accountability Act, under the penalty of perjury, first and foremost, the officer has to list every agency that they worked at. Now, agencies can go and hire, someone, but guess what? They're not going to be police, and they will not be given a badge. They will, they will not be given the authority to enforce the law, because the training commission will not certify them. And we have seen this. As I told Mr. Hurley, I've seen this very recently, where somebody tried to slide somebody in, and it didn't happen. The commission would not certify that individual as a police. Maryland has done a very good job with that Accountability Act. It closed a lot of gaps that were in law and addressed a lot of concerns. And we still, there are other measures of internal control systems, like, our investigations, they go to, from me, and then they go outside of us, and they go to the administrative charging committee, and they adjudicate the cases. They'll tell us whether it's administratively charged, if the person is exonerated, and these are members or, selected by your peers and the county executive. I think that we have a lot of good measures, in that bill, but I am extremely confident, and I usually measure things, based on probability, because I manage by risk. I think it's highly, highly improbable that someone would get hired after they've been terminated from employee from any agency in the state of Maryland.
Okay, I'd like to give Commissioner Moody an opportunity to respond. She's been very patient and waiting here. Commissioner Moody?
Hi, thank you. Let me put my hand down on this thing. Give me a second to figure out how. Okay. Ms. McCoy, thank you. You can take a break. I know you have been given so many questions. Take a breath.
No, you're fine. You're fine
right now. I know that was a lot. Just a lot of repetitive questions. So I don't have questions for you. Thank you for answering the ones you have so far. I just wanted to actually just chime in on some of the things Joshua said earlier. So, and it's more stuff that you and I, Joshua, could talk offline. I would love to. Because I've read your background and you might be aware of mine, so I think we could have some pretty interesting conversations together. But I just had some notes. Some of the things that he was asking you, Ms. McCoy, I wanted to chime in, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to directly answer. So so these are my things. First of all, and this is backing way up. But the question you had, Josh, about the scenario that you wanted her opinion about whether or not it was a red flag. I know she's in a position where she can't necessarily say certain things about her own personal opinion because she works for a certain person. I don't. So I actually can give you some opinion based on my perspective. Okay. My biggest thing that I wanted to say to that was that specific scenario. Like she said, we don't know all the details, but the word contraband really, I just wanted to make one note to give some perspective. It doesn't have to mean drugs. Mm-hmm. Contraband can be paraphernalia as well. And probable cause doesn't have to be something massive. It could have been some sort of device used to ingest drugs that was plainly visible during the traffic stop. It's just a perspective as a scenario. We don't know what it was, right? So when you see the word contraband, you think automatically like it might be something big. It could be something super small. It could be a needle that perhaps could have been a drug needle, perhaps wasn't. It could have been a smoking pipe, it could have been rolling papers, who knows what it could have been, but that could actually give him a reason to search that car. Could have found no drugs and decided, hey, it's not worth writing a citation for paraphernalia. I'll just write a citation for what I stopped him for and move on with my day, right? And the fact that like he didn't note it in a spreadsheet, you got to give some grace for human error, right? So if he didn't think it was a big deal, or he or she, I don't know the officer, but if the officer didn't think it was a big deal because the traffic stop was innocuous, it was just like any other traffic stop of the day, it might have been a big deal for the person who got pulled over, obviously, but for the officer, he's just filling out his paperwork, could have made no real intention to make sure that he dotted all his I's and crossed his T's for that specific stop because it wasn't a big deal of a stop for him, right? So, that's just a perspective. I just wanted to share it as a potential, don't get super red flag ready for certain things, because it could be very, very just casual and innocuous in law enforcement world. It doesn't have to be something big, and little things that might seem like red flags on the surface might just be simple things. And, I also just wanted to make a note just from sheer, like, I find it a double standard sometimes when people like to critique officers in the sense of, why didn't they write a citation if there was something to write a citation for? But then those are the same people who will get mad when an officer doesn't cut someone a break. So it's a double standard. And it's just something that kind of is annoying for me to hear when I hear it. It's, do you want officers to have a human-based approach and say, hey, I understand your situation. Like me personally, as a cop, pulled over a car that when weed was illegal, young kids who were in college, car full of them, smoking weed in the middle of a park in the middle of the night. They were committing so many like violations of the law. They could have been all locked up. But I talked to them, found out they were all in college, and they were in a college that had an agreement with my department where if someone at that college got locked up, they would get kicked out of college. I didn't want to do that to them. They had no prior record. And so I seized their weed. And I did not even, I didn't document it other than I investigated a suspicious vehicle. Like I cut them a break, right? So it gets annoying when people are like, well, if you really had probable cause, you would have arrested them or you would have written a citation, but then you get mad when people don't do a human thing for someone. So just, that's more my personal opinion. Just don't be so quick to judge. But my main point was, if you want some perspective from a law enforcement perspective, from someone who can actually tell you, yes, in my opinion, this is wrong, or no, it's not. And this is someone who's both been a cop and has also spent years being civilian oversight of cops. So I know a lot of cop law, right? Whether it's right or wrong, I could tell you. And you can give me as many scenarios as you want. I'm here for you. Ask me questions offline. I will answer as many as you want. So you don't have to bother Ms. McCoy with all of them. If you want to just run them by me first, you can.
Absolutely. I appreciate that too, but I'm a still bother Ms. McCoy.
Miss Moody, Josh and I have when we do get on the phone, we're usually on there for a good little bit, so I know he I'm his work mom, so
Absolutely. Definitely appreciate that perspective. But with this particular report, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, this one particular officer, Mr. Williams, was articulating several different incidents about this officer. And I understand that we don't know what methodology you use, but when the community is receiving information like that, it does raise a red flag for a person who does not know. And to be honest with you, that's the most important perspective for the Human Relations Commission, because we're supposed to be advocating for individuals who don't know. And so we have to have answers. We have to be able to communicate with the residents of the city of Annapolis and be able to say, well, this is what we learned, because we're going to receive those type of complaints.
Yeah. So I'll use this analogy, this you guys are showing this live, you have recordings of it, there is a trail, kind of like an audit trail, and you're taking minutes. So that, what was done. And, kind of, because he didn't list his methodology, how he came to it, how he went about his work, it could be tantamount, to me saying, oh, hey, I was at the human relations meeting. I put this big report out and, I said, Commissioner Hatch, said, all these, misnomers or whatever, or, from my own perspective, or, some perceived perspective about, law enforcement that, was not true or that I could not verify. And, if what I'm going to say is if you're going to do those type of reports, they have to be verifiable. You have to fact check. It's, and they have to be, qualified and quantified correctly, because you are dealing with the reputation of a department. You're dealing with the reputation of individuals, and I think that they should be done fair and equitably. What I saw again, looking at the pages, I can only dial it down to this was Mr. Williams' personal opinion, because he did not have anything to tell me that there was anything scientific in it.
Okay, are there other comments or questions from those present this evening, both commissioners as well as non-commissioners?
I had my hand up.
Yes, I know you did, Commissioner Mundy. Could you, proceed?
Just a couple questions. I was really interested about the body camera audits that you're doing, and I'm just wondering what that timeline looks like. And then what do you do with that data? Do you summarize it for like a public summary? Do you have a report at the end? I would imagine you do a lot of internal reporting on that. And then, is that something that the city of Annapolis residents would be able to see at some point?
Well,
with it all.
We are currently, looking to, stand up, our body worn camera unit. And as I said before, we have that big, grant that we're, looking to, to get the money for. And what we said was in the grant, because we do want to be transparent, that, when we report it to the, the grant folks, what we're using them, to measure the effectiveness of the BWC unit is, we would send a survey, out, to the residents, people, who had asked for, Maryland Police and, a Maryland Public Information Act request and FOIA requests. We would send information out to the administrative charging committee and other entities that had gotten that body worn camera video and would get those videos and look, and they would be the person that would be measuring our success. Do I or are we or do we mind? We haven't set that up in policy, but I can definitely talk to the chief about the possibility of putting our findings in my yearly report. We do a yearly report that we post online. For we do it for IA, but we're going to expand that report for professional standards. So we can kind of give a year in review to say like these are all the policies that we changed as well. Here's our IA reporting. This is how many audits that we conducted, and and here are the findings. And I'm fairly certain that we're going to be have a good compliance rating. In Baltimore City, when I stood up the use of force assessment, everyone told me that my compliance rating was too high at 98%. But guess what? they achieve 98% compliance because, it's repetitiveness. And what I'm seeing from, Annapolis officers, they don't have the problems that Baltimore City officers have by far. I'm very pleased, when, we are looking, from a perspective of, doing internal investigations of what we are seeing. But, no, we don't have any problem. But, I always, I don't want to overstep, my bounds. Would confer with Chief Jackson and, including our audit findings in a yearly report.
And then the other question I had was, you talked about the use of force complaints. And I guess I'm just wondering, I had gone on the website earlier and saw that, basically to file a complaint with the Annapolis police, you can, I think it was email somebody who is on the police force who had an email for the police force, or you could call internal affairs. And I guess I'm just wondering, I feel like that's probably been kind of the same policy for a while. And I guess I'm just wondering, I know that the Police Accountability Board of here in the county has been doing a listening tour to see if they can get people to talk about complaints with any police, and nobody's really showing up. And overall, I just would imagine that people are afraid to complain about police, especially if there's not a lot of trust there. And I'm just wondering, what thought goes into that, and what processes maybe are planned to help to really get citizen feedback?
Well, we are receiving, we still receive, complaints from, from citizens, they, the city website, along with, and we have to, I have to check with Ina again, because they have these two different websites. It drives me crazy, just, like with the policies, I think Mr. Hurley went on like the, departmental website got a this policy, but then the city website had to updated policy. So, now they're all changed, and, they're in sync with, with one another. But on the site, there, we were very, very careful as to list, there are a myriad of ways that you can make that individuals can make a complaint. On the site, it tells them that they can make a complaint through the accountability board. They can make a complaint with us through email. They can come in person. They can do it by telephone. The law also said that we had to stand up a portal. And so we have our public portal that they can make a complaint on the, on the web, go in, type their complaint in through the portal, and we would see it. Generally, on a whole, I can't, answer that question because we are still, getting complaints. What I would say is that, one of the things I love, using survey tools, that I would suggest is that, maybe, try to gather a group of individuals and put surveys out for residents, particularly you guys can do that for Annapolis residents, and ask them certain questions about if they had a complaint, would they complain, so you can gauge what the climate is. Some people might say yes, I'll file it. Maybe someone might say they don't have, they didn't know about the accountability board. But what I can say for our department is that yes, we are getting, we receive complaints in from individuals externally. And
I'd like to just follow up on the second question, which Commissioner Monday raised, just with this note, and that is the Anne Arundel County Police Accountability Board. which was created as part of the sweeping reform bill on police that was passed by the Maryland General Assembly in 2021. It used its quarterly update with local law enforcement agencies, of which the Annapolis Police are just one. There's several others, to demand more transparency in their handling of citizen complaints against officers. And then specifically, the Anne Arundel Board members accused the local police of not being compliant with the county council's requirements about the sharing of information, and specifically complaints of police misconduct. Chief Jackson was asked to comment about this by the Capitol, and he said that his department may be, and I quote, interested, end of quote, in a memorandum of understanding clarifying what information the city should share with the board. Are you in a position to comment about this, exactly what Chief Jackson meant in terms of sharing information with the board? Because
Yes.
The boards are extremely interested in this, and they feel they haven't been, or at least the one in Anne Arundel County doesn't feel it's been fully informed. Could you address that?
Yes, I can address that. So when the state law, was enacted, what it said is that the accountability boards, people could go to the accountability board, make a complaint, and that the accountability board had to, in 3 days, send that complaint to the law enforcement agency. One of the, reasons why I think that they made that provision is that people complain that, hey, if I go to the law enforcement office, if I, don't trust the law enforcement office, do I have another avenue to go and make a complaint where I'm assured that my complaint will be heard? And so they gave the accountability board the ability to receive complaints. When the county enacted its law to stand up the accountability board, Councilman Lacey introduced a provision that said, well, why don't the departments, reciprocate? And a number of different arguments was raised, as to, why the state did not include that in their provisions. But the county chose to enact in its law that the law enforcement agencies had to reciprocate. Councilman Lacey was told at the time that she made, put that provision in the county code, that it would be specific to the county. Annapolis is its own municipality, has its own city council, makes its own, laws, that it would only apply to the county, and that there would have to be a memorandum of understanding with the jurisdictions in order for that provision to be met. And so that's what Chief Jackson said. He would be willing to talk about a memorandum of understanding.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or comments for Ms. McCoy? That can be members of the commission, others who are attending. Ms. McCoy, I would like to express thanks on behalf of all of us for coming before the commission this evening. I might mention we have 10 of the 11 commissioners present tonight.
Oh, wow.
They're very, as I think you've probably gathered, the commission's very interested in this issue. So we really, really appreciate your coming before us this evening and responding to the concerns and the queries by members of the commission. Thank you so much for doing that. And you're also free to remain as long as you like. Commission meetings are open, and I think we are going to deal with at least one other item, which, as we get to it on the agenda, we'll deal with the whole issue of police accountability in terms of legislation before the Maryland General Assembly now. But again, thank you so much for, I think, a most
Yes, the staff liaison report will be brief this evening. These annual high school awards that we allow was accomplished. And beyond that, there's nothing more I would like to add to the staff liaison report at this time.
Okay, thank you so much for that report, Claudia. And what she is making reference to is each year, going back a long, long way, the commission has made an award at both Annapolis High School and St. Mary's High School for a student who has demonstrated outstanding work in the area of community service and serving others, as well as having a strong record in academics and student services. We'll make those two awards again. I'd like to thank you and thank Tricia Hopkins for your continued support for this.
Hey, Mike, where does that money come from, and why is St. Mary's one of the schools? Is it a St. Mary's student?
Why?
Yeah, and where does the money come from?
Yeah, well, it would come from the city of Annapolis or from the human resources budget. I've never actually asked. I know we just get it.
I budget for it every year.
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
it's in our budget in human resources.
Yeah, and why St. Mary's?
Why those two schools? Yeah.
Why do they get it? Well, within the city limits of Annapolis, you've got historically, you've got two large entities, and I shouldn't say within the city limits because St. Mary's is actually in the city limits, and Annapolis High School is outside the city limits. But those are the two largest high schools in our general jurisdiction. And so we've historically made the presentation at both Annapolis High School and at St. Mary's. Okay. All right. Going again, I just have one item in terms of business. I would like to express thanks to Mark Hildebrand for providing us with the technical support that makes the meeting possible. So I know you're out there, Mark. Yeah, I see. Here you go. Hello, Mark. Thank you for your help. Okay, we're going to go on now to the updates. I'm going to jump around a little bit because I'd like to bring up a couple of items first on this. And the first item I'd like to address is with respect to the legislation that we've been following, and that is Senate Bill 285. Just a little background on this. Since before the state law went into effect last July, that's the police accountability. Excuse me? Okay. There are civil rights leaders throughout the state criticized the effort, calling it toothless. Specifically, they were very critical of the lack of authority given to the police accountability boards in each of the jurisdictions in Maryland. And there was legislation that was introduced by Senator Jill Carter from Baltimore. She sponsored a bill, SB 285, that was aimed at giving the county boards additional authority and investigative powers and subpoena authority over cases of alleged misconduct. The bill received a hearing in the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, and it went no further. The bill never came up for a vote in committee, and there was no companion legislation introduced in the House of Delegates. So that legislation has essentially died this year. It will not be acted on by the General Assembly. Any questions related to that? Any comments related to that? Okay, the second item that I'd like to deal with, and this goes outside of the area of police reform, but it goes back to an issue that the commission has had at least 2 meetings largely devoted to, and that is the 2 pieces of legislation related to workforce housing, O4022 and R123. The Annapolis City Council approved R-123, which was sponsored by Alderman Rob Savage. And that legislation acknowledges the need for more workforce housing in the city, but specifically it postponed, I quote here, any significant changes, end of quote, until after the adoption of the next comprehensive plan, Annapolis 2040, and its release is set for May of 2024. The outcome is not surprising. I can just tell you that the vote for the resolution by Alderman Savage passed by a vote of 5-4, with Mayor Buckley and Alderwoman Ellie Tierney joining Alderman Gay and Alderman Schandelmeyer in opposing the legislation. It's not surprising because Alderman Savage had 4 co-sponsors for the bill, so the results were fairly predictable there. So that's where that stands. Are there any questions or comments related to that?
Like, it may not be surprising, but I think it's disappointing. It postpones yet another period of time from 2009 on where no action's been taken.
Mm-hmm. I have a question that I'd like to address to Tricia Hopkins on this. The last time I remember the commission dealing with a proposed city plan, comprehensive plan, was when Dr. Sally Nash was head of zoning and planning. And I definitely recall that she called on boards and commissions to attend some hearings, to attend some meetings to discuss the plan. I know I went to a couple of those meetings. We invited her to come before the commission. She testified before the commission, and then the commission issued a whole series of suggested actions to be taken under that plan. Where are things now? It seems to me are they starting the process anew, or what's?
So I did talk to Eric Lashinsky, who is the chief of comprehensive planning and in the planning and zoning department. Dr. Nash was in that position before she became the director. And yeah. I'm wondering if you were probably interacting with Dr. Nash at the point when she was actually chief of comprehensive planning, as opposed to being the director, because of the cycle of the comprehensive planning. Eric is open to coming to speak to the commission. So I want you to consider that as an option as well, so you can ask him directly those types of questions. And what I can do in addition to that, Mike, is I'll share his email address with you and his contact information to reach out to him and speak directly with him before if, and well, mostly if you'd like him to come and speak, so that you can ask those questions of him directly. If you want me to ask them of him before, like, want me to be the go-between, I'm happy to do that as well. Just to get a sense and a timetable around all of that citizen input so that the commission can be a piece of that as well.
Okay, I also see that Carrie Berger would like to address this issue. Carrie is Assistant City Attorney who serves the commission. And she is on mute right now, but I think she hears us. Do you have something that you'd like to add to this, Carrie?
I do not. I am not involved in the in the comprehensive plan or anything related to planning and zoning. So you don't even want me to give you any sort of input on it because I am completely unfamiliar with it. So, I mean, I'm like Tricia said, I'm happy to assist in any way that the commission would like, but I'm not at this point standing from a place of full knowledge as to what's going on with the plan.
Okay. Did you have your hand raised for some other issue?
Not intentionally.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, what's the desire of the commission on this issue? I guess I would like to get a sense before we invite him to come on exactly what the history of this process has been. I mean, I know a lot of work was done by this commission, and I still have the report that we submitted to the city on this. And I would just like to have a sense of what's the timetable here.
Do you mean the report from the 2009 planning, or you are involved in this current planning cycle? This HR commission's been involved in the current planning cycle.
I don't know if this goes back all the way to 2009. But there again,
Is that a report you can share, Mike? Is that something you can share with everyone?
I definitely have it on file. I'll have to go look for it, but I'm sure I've got it in my HRC file.
Okay.
I can pull that out.
So what I could offer to you, Mike, is that if you want to share with me that report, I can link you up with Eric Plashinsky. Again, he's the Chief of Comprehensive Planning, largely responsible for explaining the comprehensive plan. He just recently made a presentation to the council. He's been addressing all the various council committees as well. And those are available online, like his presentations are available to review, to watch. So I can reach out to Eric, see what I can assemble for you, which is informational, like point you in the right direction for council members to watch committee meetings if you want to do that homework. But again, he did make the offer to come and speak to the HRC whenever you'd like, and is happy to do so. It's a good way to ask those very pointed questions about engagement.
Yeah, it's my recollection that he did participate in the meetings that the commission took part in that involved other boards and commissions. But that process was spearheaded by Sally Nash, and I believe you're right, Tricia. I think she had not yet been moved up to the role of director of planning and zoning, but I definitely remember that she was getting ready to be moved up.
Yeah.
I think what I would like to do is, first of all, would there be interest on the part of the commission in hearing from Chuck? I see your
Mike. I don't know that the commission staff is the issue. I mean, the plan in 2009 called for more emphasis on affordable housing, and the policy of the city council, in my perhaps biased opinion, has been to consistently kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
No action. It's not the plan that is standing between Annapolis and more housing.
Yeah.
So respectfully, I think it is a reasonable offer that would.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure it's a good plan, but the city council has not embraced as a majority action on more affordable housing.
And to tell you the truth, I can't remember the recommendations that the commission actually made in this previous iteration of it, or
I don't think we did. No.
But I can definitely find it. And let me just ask that question: is there an interest in hearing information about where that plan is? That's basically what we would do. We would basically say, here's what we submitted to you, X number of years ago, and I can certainly trace back the date. I'll know the date of it. And where are you going forward? Where are you right now in this process? And can we reasonably expect that there's going to be something that's going to be developed? And we could add to it the whole issue of affordable housing to it. That's what I'm asking the commission is, do you want me to look into having the person who's now responsible for the development of the comprehensive plan come before the commission? Is this something you'd really like or not like? Or don't care about?
Yes,
Okay.
I think we should educate ourselves
Okay.
on all of this. And if somebody offered to come talk to us, then yes, I would like
Okay. All right. Trisha, could you get in touch with Eric and provide me with his email address, and I can reach out to him.
Sure,
on that.
absolutely. I'll do that
Yeah.
for you.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. The next item, we're just going to sort of go right back to our list of updates. The next item is the status of the so-called road shows with the county HRC regarding hate crimes and incidents in County Council District 6. Chuck is working on that along with Lakeisha Hatcher from the county HRC. What's our update there? Do we have an update?
Brief update, Mike. Lakeisha and I both agreed we should try to seek a meeting with Alderwoman Rhonda Pindell Charles. I met with her at some length. She gave a list of things she wanted us to do homework on before she could meet, and we're hopefully working on those and have a report at the next meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, the next item, and I'm also going to ask Commissioner Hurley to address this. And that's an issue that relates to a report that was prepared and circulated by the Police Accountability Board Coalition. It's an organization that the commission has endorsed their efforts in the past. But there was something that transpired. I became first aware of it when I received a telephone call from Gene Peterson, who is the chair of the County Human Relations Commission. Subsequently spoke with Chuck about it. I know that two members of the commission did receive copies of that report by email, and that two other members of the commission received a copy of the report by email. But Chuck and I have had the most conversation about it. And I'm bringing this to the commission for its guidance tonight. Chuck, could you give us some of the details?
Yeah, this is a tough one, Mike. The report was not from the coalition, but from CAST, a different organization. And I strongly support the number of the recommendations of the coalition. I mean, including S285, which I'm disappointed did not get a proper action. I think police accountability boards deserve the subpoena power that was in that bill. Unfortunately, the report was, in my personal view, and this has occurred before, was, I think, inflammatory in several areas that did not relate to the merits of the recommendations of the coalition. The coalition, however, has embraced a policy of what's called direct action, which often does allow for things that go beyond my comfort zone in terms of raising issues. I don't find inflammatory words or, in some cases, name calling to be effective. And so, as I indicated 2 meetings ago, I had pulled back from some participation. And what others do is up to them. I mean, I don't in any way seek to restrict their activities in any way. That's up to them, and they're responsible for their own activities. But on my own behalf and on behalf of the Human Relations Commission, I was not comfortable with some of the actions that were taken. And this report by CAST, I think, was unnecessarily inflammatory in a number of areas. I don't have it in front of me, Mike. You might want to read that first paragraph, but you and I talked about it, and I think you came to the same conclusion.
Yeah, I can.
And as did Gene. Eugene came to the same conclusion as well.
Yeah, basically, to give you the specifics, I don't want to take the commission's time up in actually reading through that part, but the report that was submitted, first of all, included the name of all of the partner organizations that have been involved with the Police Accountability Board Coalition, and they listed the commission, and we were listed by name. The second thing they did was they made up a logo for us. Again, the City of Annapolis Human Relations Commission has got a logo. If you look on your screen, you'll see it under Mark Hildebrand's logo thing there. I mean, that's our logo. We're a city board. But the way they presented it, it was as though we're some kind of a private agency and a private entity. And then the logo they made up for us was never run by us, never shared with us. They just popped it on. But what Chuck is referring to, and again, Gene and I also agree with this, was the very beginning of the report. The person who I think wrote it and sponsored it had some really harsh comments about the county chief of police. Didn't say anything about Chief Jackson, but extremely harsh comments about the chief on the police chief on the county side. I do know that at least 2 organizations, CASA and the Anne Arundel County NAACP, have asked that their names be removed from the report. I don't know of any other of the maybe 30 some organizations, other organizations have taken any action, at least that I'm not aware of anyway. So I think what this is more of a effort just to bring to the attention of the commission that this report does exist. There are some concerns about it. The commission is mentioned in it in the form of having our logo among the various organizations that have been partners in the past. And just the question is there anything that the commission wants to do about this, if anything? Or are you just happy to let the matter sort of just float away?
This is Commissioner Hatch. I'm actually driving, so that's why I'm not on the video. But what I would say is if reports are being produced that the commission is not endorsing or supporting, I think that we need to make that known, and we need to address whoever's producing the reports and let them know that we're not sponsoring name calling and we're not sponsoring actions that are not productive in nature. If they wish to do that, we need to pull back from actions like that.
This is Chuck, Joshua. I agree, but one of my intents is not to inflame the situation further in that it's a sensitive situation. I just think, and I agree with your point that we should express our view. The report was not from the coalition, but rather from CAST. And I think we ought to make clear that we do support many of the positions and that is the specific positions, including support for S285 of the coalition. But
Right.
we would pull back from some of the direct
Personal.
action. Yes.
Yeah, the person, but we talk on one about something that's principle, that the collective is agreeing upon versus someone utilizing their personal positions and opinions about the police chief and utilizing the human relations logo to support their comments and statements. I don't think that we should allow that to fly.
Yeah, it was not the city chief, but the county chief.
No, it doesn't matter what chief it is.
I agree. But again, I think we ought to do so quietly rather than trying to inflame the situation.
Well, what we can do is, I think both of you I agree with both of what you said. I don't think that we should, make this a huge public problem unless it somehow gets involved in the media. I don't know how many people even know about the report, much less having read it. At the same time, I concur with Joshua that I think we need to communicate perhaps privately to the person who prepared this report our grave misgivings about the tone of the preface of the report, and the fact that the Human Relations Commission didn't have an opportunity to review it in advance before our names was mentioned and a logo created for us. And I think that would cover it. Tricia or Carrie, were you even aware of the situation? Have you heard about this? Okay. It would be my guess that it hasn't gotten a lot of attention. So would the commission be supportive? We don't need to take a vote on this. Would the commission be supportive of my sending a letter to the individual who wrote this report? We do know who wrote it. Basically, it'll be private, won't be copied to anybody. Just saying that we are unhappy about some things that they did, specifically the things we've just been discussed on the call, but at the same time, not inflaming the situation, as I think Commissioner Hurley has suggested.
And indicate our continuing support for the issues, if not the tactics.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. Support for the issues, but not the tactics. Okay, is there any objection to our doing that? Okay, I think the commission is supportive of this. I think it's an unfortunate development, but I think this is one of those. I don't quote Calvin Coolidge very much as one of our last president, but I will. He did say one thing I remembered. He said, if you see 10 things coming down the road at you, 10 problems coming down the road at you, don't worry too much because 9 will get in the ditch before they get to you. That doesn't always happen, but I think this is one of the cases where it applies here. Unless this thing ends up becoming a public issue, I don't think we should do anything more than just make our positions known.
One further thing that the commission's name and should not be used unless there's express approval.
Yeah, I know both the NAACP and CASA also took that position as well.
And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I brought up last time about the Police Accountability Coalition. that it seemed like we had no representation there, but we still were considered a member.
Yeah.
The HRC was still considered a member. So I think, that's just, it's a loosely run coalition. It seems, there's definitely a core group of people that show up. But even that seems challenged because only one organization let this report out. So I think, if the HRC say we're part of a coalition, then we probably need to participate. And I did not make that last meeting because it was at 4:00 in the afternoon, which was an odd time for me. So
I did, but silence is interpreted as approval, and I think it ought to be expressed for publications.
Okay. All right. I don't believe that either the representatives from the County Human Relations Commission or the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights are here this evening. We're still not on the call, one of the two. So that actually concludes the agenda that we have this evening. Is there anything else that commissioners would like to raise before we adjourn? Any objection to adjourning? If not, I would like to again express my thanks to members of the commission as well as others for joining our meeting this evening. I see that Ms. McCoy is still with us, and I'd like to express thanks again to her for coming before us this evening and addressing the issues that the commission have been very, very concerned about. So with that, I am going to declare this meeting of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission to be adjourned, and we will follow up with the actions that have been recommended by the commission in various matters this evening. So with that, I wish everyone a